An ex-husband and an ex-wife are in court fighting in a bitter custody battle over their child. The judge asks the woman, "Why do you feel you deserve custody?" The woman says, "I brought that child into this world. My child literally came out of me. That is why I deserve custody." The judge nods his head and says, "That is a simple and logical reason. It makes sense." Then the judge turns his head to the man and asks, "She said her side of things. Why do you feel you deserve custody?" The man sits in his chair and slowly drinks from a can of Coke. Then he holds up the empty can in his hand and says, "Was this my Coke or my ex-wife's Coke?" Confused, the judge says, "I believe that was your Coke." The wife is also confused and the judge looks over at her and asks, "Was that your Coke?" The ex-wife says, "No, it was his Coke." The man looks at the judge and says, "Good, we all agree. So when I put money in a Coke machine and a Coke pops out, the Coke is mine, not the Coke machine's, correct?" Tea is an evil substance. It is much more dangerous than beer. I discovered this last night. I drank 15 beers up until 3 a.m. in the pub while my wife was just at home drinking tea. You should have seen how mad and violent she was when I got home. She threw the chair at me and kept screaming at the top of her lungs. On the other hand, I was quiet and peaceful and silently made my way to bed. But she kept cursing and shouting through the night and well into the next morning. Kim Jong-un announced in a news conference that North Korea would be sending a man to the sun within 10 years. A reporter said, "But the sun is very hot. How can your man land on the sun?" There was a stunned silence. Nobody knew how to react. Then Kim Jong-un quietly answered, "We will land at night." The entire audience broke out in thunderous applause. A large woman, wearing a sleeveless sundress, walked into a bar in Dublin. She raised her right arm, revealing a huge, hairy armpit, and, as she pointed to all the people sitting at the bar, she asked, "What man here will buy a lady a drink?" The bar went silent as patrons tried to ignore her. But down at the end of the bar, an owly-eyed drunk slammed his hand down on the counter and bellowed, "Give the ballerina a drink!" The bartender poured the drink and the woman chugged it down. She turned to the patrons and again pointed around at all of them, revealing the same hairy armpit, and asked, "What man here will buy a lady a drink?" Once again, the same little drunk slapped his money down on the bar and said, "Give the ballerina another drink." The bartender approached the little drunk and said, "Tell me, Patty, it's your business if you want to buy the lady a drink, but why do you keep calling her the ballerina?" The drunk replied, "Any woman who can lift her leg that high has got to be a ballerina." A girl tells her mother after school, "Mom, I got a gold star today for reciting the whole alphabet. The rest of my class only knows 3 or 4 letters." "Well done, darling," the girl's mother replies. "That's because you're blonde." After returning from school the next day, the girl tells her mother, "I am the smartest student in my maths class. I can count up to 15. Everyone else stopped at about 5 foot." "Well done," replies the mother again. "That's because you're blonde." The following day, the girl says to her mother, "Mom, today we measured our in class and mine is the largest. Is that because I'm blonde?" "No, darling, that's because you're 18. Two beggars are sitting side by side on the street in Rome. One has a cross in front of him, the other a Star of David. Many people go by but only put money into the hat of the beggar sitting behind the cross. A priest comes by, stops, and watches throngs of people giving money to the beggar sitting behind the cross, but none give to the beggar sitting behind the Star of David. Finally, the priest goes over to the beggar behind the Star of David and says, "Don't you understand? This is a Catholic country. People aren't going to give you money if you sit there with a Star of David in front of you, especially if you're sitting beside a beggar who has a cross. In fact, they would probably give it to him just out of spite." The beggar behind the Star of David listened to the priest, turned to the other beggar with the cross, and said, "Moshe, look who's trying to teach the Goldstein brothers about marketing." A drunk says to the bartender, "I want a woman." So, the bartender gives him directions to the local brothel. The customer was so drunk, he misread the directions and accidentally went into the office of a foot doctor. The receptionist at the counter asks, "Can I help you?" "Yes, I want some service," states the drunk. She sends him to one of the examination rooms and tells him to put it on the table. The drunk goes in and places his manhood on the exam table. When the doctor comes in, the startled podiatrist sees the man's member on the table, and she says, "That's not a foot." The drunk replies, "Give it time, lady, give it time." A completely inebriated man was stumbling down the street with one foot on the curb and one foot in the gutter. A cop pulled up and said, "I've got to take you in, pal. You're obviously drunk." The wasted man asked, "Officer, are you absolutely sure I'm drunk?" "Yeah, buddy, I'm sure," said the cop. "Let's go." Breathing a sigh of relief, the wino said, "Thank goodness. I thought I was crippled." Once upon a time in a village, a man appeared and announced to the villagers that he would buy monkeys for $10 each. The villagers, seeing that there were many monkeys around, went out to the forest and started catching them. The man bought thousands at $10, and as supply started to diminish, the villagers stopped their effort. He further announced that he would now buy at $20. This renewed the efforts of the villagers, and they started catching monkeys again. Soon the supply diminished even further, and people started going back to their farms. The offer increased to $25 each, and the supply of monkeys became so little that it was an effort to even see a monkey, let alone catch it. The man now announced that he would buy monkeys at $50. However, since he had to go to the city on some business, his assistant would now buy on behalf of him. In the absence of the man, the assistant told the villagers, "Look at all these monkeys in the big cage that the man has collected. I will sell them to you at $35, and when the man returns from the city, you can sell them to him for $50 each." The villagers rounded up all their savings and bought all the monkeys. They never saw the man nor his assistant. Only monkeys everywhere. Now you have a better understanding of how the cryptocurrency market works. So this guy lost his right foot in an accident. Lucky for him, he got a great prosthetic, so nobody knew he was wearing a prosthetic foot. Some years later, he met a girl but didn't tell her about his disability. They got married, and on the wedding night, he took off his prosthetic foot to show his new bride. Horrified, she straight called her mom. "Mom, you wouldn't believe it. He only got one foot." The mom then yelled back at her, "Goldmanite child, be grateful. Your dad is only 6 inches.